Hello and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Bajo.
I'm Junglist.
Well, Jung, it seems only fitting that whilst the world's elite athletes are slugging it out for medals in Beijing, that we should slug it out for the sake of gaming, with the official game of the 29th Olympiad.
Peter Moore is one of the most important people working in the industry. After many years at Xbox, he now heads up sports at Electronic Arts. We caught up with him at E3.
Plus the game that's frying a few synapses, Braid. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
What's making the news, Bedge?
Oh, lots! The refused classification of Bethesda Softworks' highly anticipated Fallout 3 has finally been revised by Australia's Office of Film and Literature Classification. Last week, we reported that the post-apocalyptic role-playing game had been banned by the OFLC for its overly realistic depictions of drug use. However, the game was modified and resubmitted, and on the 7th of August, it was reclassified as MA15+, although it is still unclear what game content had to be sacrificed to earn its rating. Good Game got in touch with Fallout 3's local distributor Red Ant Enterprises, but they declined to comment. Epic Games have just announced a special edition for its upcoming game, Gears of War 2. For the release of the title, Epic are offering a life-sized replica of the game's most famous weapon, the half-machine gun, half-chainsaw Lancer. The plastic gunsaw is almost a metre long, making it one of the largest bonus items to ever be given away with a game. But the Lancer bundle is so far only confirmed for release in North America. Fury, the Australian-made player versus player RPG, has finally called it quits, with the game's publisher, Orin Games, turning off its servers and closing down its official website in the past week. Orin made headlines earlier this year when the slow sales of Fury caused the closure of the company's game development department, resulting in the loss of around 60 jobs. In the game's last few months, Orin had attempted to turn Fury's profits around, but despite switching to a new free-to-play business model, they were still not able to attract enough players to keep the game alive.
Good game!
We are now in an age where digital distribution can take the fruits of one man's labour to the rest of the world. Jonathan Blow, a game design academic, is the latest such binary battler. He's taken the simple concept of a puzzling platformer, manipulated it with the fourth dimension, and called it Braid.
Hand-painted visuals and baroque music kind of give you the feeling of a hobbit walking through the Shire, and you're having fun even before you get to the first puzzle. And with some humorous homage to Mario and Banjo-Kazooie, the experience feels homemade and crafted with care.
As Tim, you set off on an adventure to find your princess. Lessons learned and experiences along the way are represented by puzzle pieces, which form a larger puzzle belonging to each level. Of course, some lessons are harder learned than others, but then Tim is no ordinary jumpman.
Tim has control over time, and you can fast forward and rewind as you see fit. Different speeds are given for your convenience, and on its own, it ensures that you're not punished for every mistake.
But after a straightforward first level, time starts to behave strangely. One level, time moves forwards and backwards as you do. Another, your movements are repeated by a ghost after you hit the rewind button. And another gives you a ring that slows down everything that is close to it.
All of these things are great ideas, but where it really all comes together is in the level design. Everything's in the perfect place. Everything is crafted so that you don't have to guess and check. There's no trial and error or random or obscure solutions. You just look at it for a while, wait for your brain to think the right way, and it clicks.
And when was the last time that you really felt pride after beating a puzzle game? For me, it was Portal.
I haven't felt a sense of pride like this since Ocarina of Time. So no walkthroughs on this one, don't cheat yourself.
If I had one criticism, it's that it's a bit short, and I don't really see myself wanting to play this through again. But I just want more.
Yeah, I thought so too at first, but I actually beat The Bourne Conspiracy faster than this little 2D puzzler. And when you think some games just blow out the game time by making you do levels over and over when you already know the solution, this game doesn't do that.
Jonathan Blow is famous in dev land for his outspoken views on game design. He says that often games have conflicting elements that confuse their audiences, such as Marcus Phoenix looking like a total badass, but you don't really feel like one when you're taking cover and sucking your thumb waiting for your health to recover. He also says that the main problem in games is that story is directly opposed to interactivity and they just don't agree with each other.
He gets around this in his own game by letting you choose whether or not to read books that you walk past. And it's a good thing he does because the story is open to a wide range of interpretations, which is a nice way of saying it doesn't make sense.
Braid sends a message to the little man. Small collaborative projects can work, but not without hard work. Braid was submitted to a game festival in 2005 as a playable game, so that means it's had 3 years of playtesting and polish. If you look at Braid as a simple set of rules, it's the objects that break this time mechanic that make it interesting and fun. I loved it. I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
This guy knows how to make a game, and it's exactly the sort of game that should be brought to the masses by digital distribution. Every little bit of this game is independent, from the music to the artwork, and what's not to love? I'm giving it a 10 out of 10.
Good game!
Just a reminder, Brainiacs, that you only have 1 week left to contribute to the Good Game Office Wars. We still need your help with the music, the background to the main characters, and the company logo.
More information is on the website, so check it out. Also, there's credits in the game up for grabs as well. But now, it's time for After the Game.
Video game heroes. They vanquished their enemies, stormed the temples, and rescued the princesses. What becomes of these celebrated heroes in the aftermath of their success? Sadly, they often find themselves here. This hedgehog was once hailed as a savior by a large group of small furry animals. And now, his success behind him, he is unable to adapt to life in the 21st century.
Do you have any references from your previous boss?
I defeated my previous boss.
After we'd interviewed him, he got drunk and robbed a jewelry store. He was seen fleeing the area with a large collection of gold rings. However, police recovered the stolen goods when Sonic slipped and fell onto these objects. Sonic is not alone, however. This man is a former tradesman who experienced some success rescuing his partner from a castle. Mario found work with a temp agency, but was soon the victim of a freak accident in the workplace. He had innocuously bumped into this cactus and was suddenly reduced to half his former height. This meant that he was no longer able to reach the top of his desk.
It's not fair. They let me go. What kind of a job security can I get in this wintry employment climate?
For some victims of post-video game success disorder, however, the only outcome is self-destructive ruin.
Hey man, you got a light?
By the end of this year, over 300 video game heroes will be struggling with unemployment, poverty, substance abuse, and domestic violence. Please, give generously.
Good game!
It's the Olympics of electronic sport, the World Cyber Games. And last week, the best gamers in the country gathered to battle it out for the rights to represent Australia in the World Finals in Germany this November.
They got a dig. One trying to bomb. One low.
It's just ecstatic, really. I haven't even felt it yet. I mean, we won that last round and we all just started jumping. It was great, man. It was great.
How many hours would you guys practice every night?
About four. Yeah, at least 4 hours a night, minimum.
Australia has a bit of a record of going overseas and then kind of falling to pieces when they get to the European teams. How are you going to step it up to represent Australia this time around?
Obviously, our experience overseas is extremely limited, but you know, we'll take it one by one and see how we go. But we will definitely put all our heart into it and our mind into it, and we'll try to win. You know, we go there to win. You know, we go there to win.
All right, Moonglade, you've just won the Australian qualifier for Warcraft 3 in the WCG.
That's right.
How did you do it?
A lot of practice, yeah, and know your opponents, basically. The guy that I played in the final is also in my online team, so we've practiced a lot together and we know each other very well.
Was there a specific strategy that you used in this competition?
Yeah, I did a lot of early rush strategies on most of the maps. His certain race is weak to them, so I practiced a lot of them, and he knew it was coming, but he didn't really stop it, so...
The competition was very good. We practiced a lot, like heaps coming in this tournament, more than we've practiced for any other tournament. We really wanted to represent Australia internationally. We've been wanting to do that since WCG 2005 when Halo 2 came out, and yeah, we finally did it. We are a really aggressive team, so we just tried to play aggressive and put the other team off, just not let them get set up really and just put them off their game.
I'm sure there's a lot of mums out there who don't quite understand gaming, let alone professional gaming, but you seem to be quite involved in it. Is that rewarding for you personally?
Oh yeah, it's great to see them do something that they enjoy and that they're good at, and yeah, you know, you go through the ups and downs with them, you know, their disappointment when they don't get through and their elation when they do.
Now, do you ever say, come on guys, you have to practice?
No. Usually at about 2 a.m. when I can't get to sleep, it's more like, do you have to keep practicing? Because it's disturbing the rest of the house. So no, I never have to encourage them to practice. Unlike homework, which does require some encouragement.
Good game.
Here at Good Game, we do like to interview the movers and shakers of the gaming industry, and there are a few bigger movers, or shakers, than Peter Moore.
In a career that's lasted over 20 years, Peter headed up Sega of America before taking over Microsoft's interactive entertainment division. Immediately after E3 last year, Peter shocked the gaming world by announcing his resignation from Xbox to take over the sports division at Electronic Arts.
We caught up with Peter at this year's E3 and began by asking him what new things he's going to be bringing to EA Sports titles.
Basically what it is taking statistical data that is produced every single night when the games are played, and then overlaying that almost overnight into the game experience, obviously through an update to the game, and then the next day the game will play slightly different based on what we have seen the night before in the real NBA game. We're far gone now from the old days of when you just hard-coded a game and that game never changed. And that's what the dynamic element of it, and the DNA, of course, is the tendencies, the behavioral tendencies each and every player has on the team.
If it's successful, will it be rolling out with possibly some Australian titles?
Yeah, we're looking at it. Obviously, it's a pilot program with the NBA. It's the sport, I think, that really lends itself well to this. It's very labor intensive, you can imagine, tracking every player, every game, every night. But we've already looked at every other sport. I think hockey is next. You can imagine football, soccer, rugby, in particular. The tendencies. The problem is that the more players on the field, the more difficult it is to pick out tendencies. And the bigger team games are more challenging because they're a little bit more scripted.
Is there a lot of pressure being the head of such a big department with, I imagine, a huge fan base?
It's a fun pressure. You know, EA Sports alone is more than $1 billion business every year. And we have a lot of passionate fans. You know, I enjoy actually doing a blog, and a lot of them hate me, and some like me. But I'd say the majority hate me for whatever reason. And fortunately, I got a pretty thick skin from having my wife shout at me for 25 years. So what some gamer thinks of my decisions about PC games, I take them very seriously, but sticks and stones.
While we're talking about PC gaming, it seems it's kind of shying away a little bit with PC games with sports now. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, you know, we've looked at it, and we've said this many times over the last 5 or 6 weeks, is that there's some business challenges in the sport genre on the PC as a platform that I think are going to necessitate us changing the way that we go to market with our games. I think online needs to be a much bigger part of what we do. The concept of physical packaged goods is slowly but surely going away as hard drives continue to get bigger and bandwidth and broadband speeds get faster. And as a result, I think we need to react as an industry. What we don't want to be is the music industry. The music industry hung on for too long, wanted you and I to buy CDs for $15, $20, and didn't want to in any way encourage downloads because they worried about their IP. And the consumer said, no, this is what I want to do. People around the music industry started to facilitate file sharing and the ability to do download, and the user-generated community came in and started to be able to swap songs, and the music industry has suffered badly.
What have you learned from just working in so many different big companies?
Sega, in particular, you know, with the Dreamcast was both an incredibly exciting time and then a devastating time when things didn't work out the way we wanted it.
Was it a hard thing to change the company's direction?
If you remember those days, you know, the platform had launched rather poorly in Japan, and they weren't getting the traction. It had launched actually about 8 months before we had launched here in North America on famously on 9/9/99. We had launched the Dreamcast here. It was doing okay in Europe, but nothing that was setting the house on fire. Obviously, it was the first online console, but we were dial-up. We were 56K dial-up. And it was incredibly traumatic to realize as we were going into holiday 2000 that we were like the little engine that could, and we needed to get up to an installed base to keep everything moving. And when the dust settled in early January, it was very clear that we had missed our target, not by a lot, quite frankly. And on January 31st, for some reason, I'm the guy that made the announcement in San Francisco that Sega, unfortunately, was getting out of the hardware business, that we were going to sell off the Dreamcast and we were going to become a third-party publisher. I think every gamer has a little love for, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog or Virtua Fighter or all of the great things. In my days, it was Panzer Dragoon or Golden Axe or Altered Beast. All great franchises, but unfortunately, the industry moved and started to westernize and mature content came in, and Sega simply couldn't react to that real trend in the industry, stayed focused on Japanese content. For a while became almost local to Japan and really couldn't extend itself outside of the Japanese board.
Console of all time, if you could think of all the consoles you've played.
It's like saying, which of my children do I love the most? Boy, there's a lot. I mean, I can remember playing Top Gun, and it could have been on the Super NES and trying to land that damn plane on that aircraft carrier. I don't know if you ever played that.
Hard to do.
Yeah, for hours on end, and then going up and fighting the MiG fighter. And when I look at that game now, I can just see the screens of it. You know, incredibly blocky, and there was no textures in the game. But for something about that, and then NBA Jam on the Game Boy. I just remembered sitting there for like days, and of course the Game Boy was this big brick, and of course I think it was grayscale. It wasn't even color in those days.
It's a shame Peter wasn't still working with Xbox when we interviewed him, or perhaps we could have asked him about our growing stack of red-ringed 360 consoles.
Yeah, I think we calculated about 5 red rings within the space of 1 week. And the Elite's supposed to have better hardware, but that one red ringed twice. And they have a pretty efficient repair service, but still.
And when the Elite came back the first time, it's kind of insulting to get that email, good news, your 360's on the way back to you, if it still doesn't work.
They're not cheap machines either, and if you look around the den of gaming, I think it's the Atari 2600 is our oldest one. It's 30 years old and it's still going strong.
It's got wood on it as well.
Maybe that's the key. Maybe they need to put wood paneling in the 360.
Give it that extra strength to last the distance. Maybe it'd be quieter as well. Tisk, tisk, tisk for shame, Microsoft.
Good game.
With the world still in the grip of metal fever, we think it's time to take a look back through the history of video games inspired by the Olympics. The first game off the blocks was this one. Way back in 1981, just after the Moscow Olympics, a little company named Microsoft released a game called Decathlon. This was before Microsoft had hit it big with their MS-DOS operating system, so Decathlon actually made its debut on the Apple II home computer. As the name suggests, the game featured 10 Olympic events, ranging from a 100-meter dash to a shot put throw. It also established a kind of tradition amongst Olympic games: button mashing. Quick fingers were the only skill you needed to be a contender in this Olympiad, since whoever tapped the 1 and 2 keys the fastest took the gold medal every single time. Not exactly compelling game design. The next big Mashtacular Mash Fest was this. It's track and field, and it was released in arcades by Japanese game publisher Konami in 1983. In the 80s, this game could be found in almost every milk bar. And if you played it back in the day, you'll probably have some rose-tinted memories of it being an enjoyable way to spend your 20 cents pocket money. But trust us, this thing does not hold up today. Once again, you had to run, jump, and throw things, all by furiously mashing your buttons. And just like before, track and field had almost no entertainment value. If you track this machine down today, we recommend you save your 20 cents. I think I'm starting to see a pattern here. Anyway, the next two wannabe sports stars were these. It was Summer Games and its cold climate counterpart, Winter Games, first released on the Commodore 64 in 1984. Thankfully, there was slightly more to Summer and Winter Games than just randomly slapping the keyboard. Winter Games had you bobsledding down mountains and backflipping off jumps, while Summer Games had you blasting clay pigeons and more, with a lot less button mashing than you'd expect. Things were starting to look a little better for the Olympic genre. The next game obviously didn't pay any attention though, because by the time this next game came out in 1992, it was business as usual. Olympic Gold is most notable for being the first game to ever be officially licensed from the International Olympic Committee, although if the IOC had known how rubbish this thing was going to be, we think they may have reconsidered. Still, at least it wasn't as bad as this. It's Izzy's quest for the Olympic rings on the Super Nintendo, and it starred Izzy, possibly the worst excuse for an Olympic mascot ever conceived. This random arrangement of garish colors was the mascot of the 1996 Atlanta Games, and his name, Izzy, was short for What Is It? Because nobody actually knew what the hell he was supposed to be. Apart from its contemptible protagonist, Izzy's quest was about as bad as platform games got in the mid-90s. The only medal this thing would win is a gold for boring game design. There are, of course, countless other forgettable virtual Olympiads. The Sydney 2000 Olympics inspired a variety of awful games to flood the marketplace, not least of which was the almost intolerable official game, as well as a sequel to Konami's Track and Field, which was only slightly less intolerable.
The distance was 60.67 meters.
With the release of Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games, the motion-sensitive Wii allowed button-mashing gameplay to be replaced with Wiimote waggling gameplay. And even though it sucked just as much as the rest of them, at least this one had Mario in it. And with that, we're almost up to date. Although there's just one more Olympic game to cross off our list, Beijing 2008. Every now and then here at Good Games, something comes along that redefines what the word fun really means, whether it's amazing gameplay or a smart user interface, or connecting with the gamer on an emotional level.
What Beijing Olympics 2008 does is show us what things are like at the other end of the spectrum, where fun goes to die. We reviewed this funeral for electronic entertainment on the Xbox 360.
To kick things off, you're invited to take part in shooting off fireworks in the opening ceremony. The Bird Nest Stadium looks good, but trust us when we say shooting off fireworks is nowhere near as fun as it sounds. Once you leap into your first event and choose your country, the blatant Beijing button-mashing bonanza begins.
Many events require the rigorous repetitive action of pressing A and B as fast as possible, or if you feel like wearing out your controller a little sooner, you can rotate the stick as fast as you can. And often you're then required to flip around and push the triggers, and it's all just a bit awkward. And I gotta say, Junk, where is the fun in doing this?
It's definitely on holiday, Badge. Our best guess is that they tried to emulate the painful feeling of lactic acid buildup that real exercise creates. Our arms were tired after 5 minutes, but we were ready to put the game down well before that. It just doesn't have the excitement that other sports games have.
The whole experience is awkward at best. The hurdles are frustratingly unforgiving, the table tennis is jerky, the tutorials seem to be missing information or it goes too fast, and the floor exercise, even if you stuff up, it's actually not represented on screen and doesn't really affect the action, so it's more like tracing a picture than actually drawing one.
This turns into one big QuickTime event with no payoff. We could go on and on about each event and why it isn't fun, but we only have a half-hour show. This screams cash into me, Badge.
I hear you, John. And you know, your controls are your direct link to a game, and if you have to spend more time wondering what you should be pressing than actually enjoying the game, then it's an epic fail.
The only real positive thing about this is there are a lot of events and the actual competitors look good and they've been captured well, but a lot of good-looking poo is still poo, and it's just not enough to capture the Olympic spirit.
It's all well and good to focus on quantity and authenticity of events and having online leaderboards, but not at the cost of gameplay. In fact, to demonstrate a much more exciting way to interact with this game, we've decided to have our own Olympic event. Prepare yourselves for the Beijing Olympic Games.
I think we've done our country proud, Badge. But as for the game, it failed to qualify. I'm giving it a 2.
I think so too, Jung. I'm giving it 2 as well.
Good game.
So, did you guess the game for this week?
It was Virtua Striker 2, an arcade-style soccer game which was released in the arcades and also on Dreamcast in 1999.
Did you remember how Peter Moore told us that he was president of Sega of America during the Dreamcast era, Batch?
I do.
Well, this was the first game where he was credited as the company's president, although certainly not the last.
We'll be back the same time next week, gamers, with more game news, interviews, and reviews.
Space Siege is the latest game from developer Chris Taylor of Supreme Commander fame. It's an RPG that aims to challenge our ethics by making us choose whether to remain human or upgrade yourself with technology.
And a week later than promised, 2 Human has finally arrived in the den of gaming.
Loki is now our most dangerous enemy.
Also, we follow our mentorship winners as they begin work on the Good Game game, Office Wars.
As usual, share your thoughts about the show or gaming on our forums. Till next time, gamers, Junglist out.
Bajo out.